This video is going to be about Black Lives Matter. It's going to be totally focused on Black Lives Matter and its white support. I think it's very important for us to understand how a lot of white people, a lot of young white people, joined Black Lives Matter all of a sudden within the last month. We have to understand what the cause of that was, and that's clearly the death of George Floyd. There's no question about it. The George Floyd's death, George Floyd's death is the reason for the reversal of Black Lives Matter. Because before, Black Lives Matter was considered angry. They were considered too racial, considered complainers, considered, again, angry black people. And at the worst, it was considered a terrorist organization by some on the right. And even the guy in the Minnesota Police Union says right now, even the guy in the police union of Minnesota, I guess Minneapolis, says right now, some of them engage in domestic terrorism. But again, we have to still understand why we have such great white support. It's because of the death of George Floyd. I do believe that the support of Black Lives Matter from young whites is in serious jeopardy because I think the other police brutality cases that will come up involving blacks and white police officers primarily are not going to be as perceived as innocent as George Floyd. Let's take, for example, Rayshard Brooks. In the Rayshard Brooks case, I wouldn't be surprised that many whites that are supporting Black Lives Matter think it's a justified shooting because he resisted arrest. What this boils down to, folks, is that in order for this white support, this young white support for Black Lives Matter to continue, it is important for Black Lives Matter to make it clear the type of racism we're talking about when it involves police brutality and everything else that involves black people. We're talking about subtle, institutional, subtle, systemic, again, subtle, systemic racism, which has implicit bias, where whites are unconscious of how they're treating black people. Let me give you an example of what implicit bias, very innocent implicit bias. If you think about it, just for a second. Now, this study was in 1991, but I guarantee you can do the study today. There's just a little social experiment with a black guy and a white guy. A black guy and a white guy are tested to go to this car place to check out a specific car. And the same dealer is selling the car. Well, with the black guy, they charge, first of all, they expect more down payment. As a matter of fact, I don't know the numerical difference, but I think with the black guy it was like $3,000 they wanted down. With the white guy, I think it was no down payment or just $1,000, and he charged $500 more for the car, or he asked for $500 more for the car for the black guy than the white guy. Now that could be I think that's implicit bias. I think that is just, I don't know, just again implicit. Now I can understand why many of you may think that's deliberate, because if those were the only two people he saw that day, then what's the difference? Now again, does he ask for the same price for each person? Probably not. Does he ask for the same amount for down payment for each person? exactly even with white people? Probably not. But we're probably, if you tested him again with blacks, black person or white person, you probably will see a significant disparity. But that's just one. That's something that I would call implicit bias. Probably not the best example because that could be seen as intentional. Um, but I'll try to give it another example some other time. I don't know because I'll be doing a lot of videos like this. But the bottom line is, if you don't understand implicit bias, which contributes to systematic racism. Okay, if whites don't understand that, if they think it's just a bad cop show, racists are just racist pigs on the police force, the KKK on the police force, and they're just mean to black people, and you know, if that is their perception of racism, racism is based on the individual having hostility towards blacks. We're not gonna, the Black Lives Matter movement won't maintain that white support.